Okay, Assalamu alaikum. I hope कि पिछले कुछ दिन आप लोगों ने खैरियत से गुजारे होंगे. So today we are here to discuss the last topic in this class. The topic for today is the anal canal. इसके बाद what is left is external genitalia in male and in female. That is something that is not conventionally taught. So, those who want to study, please do it on your own. It's self-study में आता है. You have one whole week, 4 days. In fact, your substage has been shifted till Friday, 24th April, one day before Ramzan. So, you have 4 days to study the external genitalia if you want to. Otherwise, after today, the syllabus will be is complete. This is the last topic. If there's anything that you want me to repeat, I'll do that. Otherwise, I'll repeat the topics on pelvis and perineum because that is the part I feel that students face difficulty in. Okay, so let's start with the anal canal. The anal canal is the last part of the gastrointestinal tract. This part is lying between the lower surface of the pelvic diaphragm and the anus. So this part of the GIT, the last part, lying between the lower surface, inferior surface of the pelvic diaphragm and the anus. This is the anal canal. The total length is around 3 to 4 centimeters or 4.5 centimeters, whatever, varying from person to person, but by and large, this is the total length. Now, it begins where the rectum, the dilated part of the rectum called the ampulla. When the ampulla of the rectum suddenly tapers down to this narrow structure. That is the point where the puborectalis sling. This puborectalis is simply part of the levator ani. Remember, the puborectalis sling surrounds the junction of the pelvis, the junction of the rectum, the ampulla of the rectum, and the anal canal. It makes a 90 degrees angle. The rectum makes a 90 degrees angle with the anal canal. This is due to the pull of the puborectalis. This is the site where the rectum ends and the anal canal starts. This puborectalis sling, as we have already discussed, is important in maintaining the fecal continence, because when it is tense, it pulls this anorectal junction, and the angle is 90 degrees. Fecal matter cannot pass. When this relaxes, the ampulla of the rectum and the anal canal make a straight line, come in a straight line, and the fecal matter from the rectum passes down the anal canal. So that is how the continence of the fecal matter is maintained. Now, please also note that this anal canal is lying between the perineal body anteriorly. Anteriorly is the perineal body, and posteriorly is anococcygeal raphe के लिए, या इसको आप anococcygeal ligament कह लीजिए, because through this ligament it is attached to the coccyx. So anterior to the anal canal you have perineal body, and posterior to the anal canal you have the anococcygeal raphe. Now please also note that this anal canal is surrounded by muscles. These are the circular muscles. These muscles, this is a muscle. These are the cut sections of muscle. These muscles make up sphincters called the internal anal sphincter, which is this one. This is the internal anal sphincter and this is the external anal sphincter. Okay, now let's do them one by one. Let's start with the internal anal sphincter. The internal anal sphincter is an involuntary sphincter. This blue one is the internal anal sphincter, which is an involuntary sphincter. This involuntary sphincter surrounds the upper 2/3 of the anal canal. Please note it is not extending down to the anal verge, lower limit of the anal. It is ending here, so it is only surrounding the upper 2/3 of the anal canal. This is simply an extension of the circular muscle cord of the anal canal. Okay. It is remains tonically contracted and is the sympathetic supply coming. Basically, it's made up of smooth muscle, and all smooth muscles receive their innervation from autonomic nerves. Autonomic means sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic supply comes from hypogastric plexus, is the inferior hypogastric plexus. The parasympathetic supply, which inhibits contraction. Sympathetic supply stimulates contraction. Parasympathetic supply inhibits contraction. Okay. Now, I just told you that this muscle is in a state of tonic contraction. That means it remains contracted throughout till it receives a stimulus to dilate. Otherwise, it remains contracted. Nerve supply, hypogastric plexus is sympathetic supply. Parasympathetic supply जो है, that makes it tonically contracted. External anal sphincter की बात कर लेते हैं. External anal sphincter is made up of skeletal muscle fibers. It's a voluntary sphincter. Please note that this voluntary sphincter is lying in the lower 2/3 of the anal canal. So the external anal sphincter surrounds the lower 2/3 of the anal canal. Internal upper 2/3 में, external lower 2/3 में. Internal sphincter was involuntary, smooth muscle. External sphincter, voluntary है, skeletal muscle. This external anal sphincter has 3 parts. ठीक है? इसका जो middle part है ना, that is attached posteriorly to the coccyx through this anococcygeal body, anococcygeal ligament, whatever you want to call it. This is the middle part of the sphincter, which is attached posteriorly to the anococcygeal body. Anteriorly, it is attached to the perineal body. Okay? And superiorly, this muscle, the external anal sphincter, merges with this puborectalis sling. ये puborectalis sling है, made up of levator ani. This merges with the uppermost part of the external anal sphincter. अच्छा, Abhi tak, do we have any questions? Any problems so far? Do I go ahead? Okay. Since there are no problems, good. I'm glad. Achha ji. So, continuing with the external anal sphincter. The external anal sphincter is divided into three parts. The deep part, which merges with the tuborectalis sling. The deep part completely encircles the anal canal. Okay? It has no bony attachment. It simply merges with the tuborectalis sling. In fact, it is the deep part which also receives its nerve supply from fibers supplying the levator ani. Okay? The next is the superficial part. The superficial part is the part which is posteriorly attached to the coccyx through the anococcygeal ligament. The superficial part is attached anteriorly to the perineal body. This middle part or the superficial part is the only part of the external sphincter that has a bony attachment and also an attachment to the perineal body. Otherwise, please note that the deep sphincter did not have any attachment. It just went round the anal canal. Then comes the lowermost part, which is the subcutaneous part. The subcutaneous part once again encircles the anal canal and it is attached to the skin of the anal canal. So this is the subcutaneous part attached to the skin. Now, if you see it, a cut section, longitudinal section, taken through the anal canal. This is the circular muscle. Now, this is the internal anal sphincter. The internal anal sphincter, which is simply smooth muscle encircling the anal canal. Involuntary sphincter, tonically contracted. Now, on the outside, please note the external anal sphincter with its three parts: deep, superficial part, and the subcutaneous part. The deep part merges with the levator ani, tuborectalis part of the levator ani, and the subcutaneous part is simply attached to the skin. The nerve supply of the external anal sphincter comes from S4 through the inferior rectal nerves. So this external anal sphincter is supplied by the inferior rectal nerve. Inferior rectal nerve is a branch of the pudendal nerve, which is a somatic nerve. Okay? So on the external anal sphincter through the inferior rectal nerve, internal anal sphincter is autonomic supply, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, now let's do the interior of the anal canal. What do you see on the inside? Now, I hope you remember that these were your rectal valves, the three rectal valves of Houston. Now, below these valves start the anal canal. This is the ampulla. When the ampulla narrows, the anal canal starts. The anal canal on the outside as you appreciate, is lined by mucous membrane. This mucous membrane is thrown into longitudinal folds or longitudinal ridges. These ridges, longitudinal ridges, are called anal columns. ये देखिए, these are the longitudinal folds. Okay? They are called anal columns, and these ridges are produced by the terminal branches of superior rectal artery. So the superior rectal artery, the terminal branches of the superior rectal artery raise these folds, which are called anal columns. Beautifully given in this diagram. These folds called anal columns. ठीक है जी? Now at the superior end of the column, over here, this is the superior end of the column. This is approximately the site of anorectal junction. So this is where the anal canal starts, and the rectal. This part is the rectum, and this is the anal canal, because this is where the anal canal. At the inferior end of the anal canal, ये देख लीजिए, ये inferior end of the anal canal. बेटा, the inferior end of the anal canal are joined together by folds of mucous membrane over here. These inferior ends, they are called, these folds of mucous membrane joining the adjacent columns are called anal valves. So here, anal valves. This is the anal valve. Simply folds of mucous membrane joining the anal valves. Okay? Immediately above the anal valves, these are the recesses. Simply gaps and simply. They are called anal sinuses. So folds of mucous membrane joining the adjacent columns, anal columns, are called anal valves. Above the anal valves, this small area or recess is called anal sinus. Importance of anal sinus is that glands of the anal canal, mucous glands of the anal canal, anal glands they are called, the ducts of the anal glands open in these anal sinuses, which are simply small areas or recesses lying above the anal valve. Now the importance of these glands, anal glands, is that when fecal matter comes to this point, comes over here, it compresses these glands. When the glands are compressed, they expel their secretions out of these openings lying in the anal sinuses. When the secretions are expelled or pushed out of the ducts of the anal gland, they mix with the fecal matter and lubricate the fecal matter. So the importance is that simply that glands open over here, ducts of the anal glands, which are mucous glands, and they simply add mucus to the fecal matter. Continuing with the interior of the anal canal. Now, this is the zigzag line. This line where you have the anal valves. So the lower limit of the anal valves. This is the lower limit. The blue line is the lower limit of the anal valve. Okay? This is the line, a very important line, which is called the Pectinet line or the dentate line. Okay? Extremely important. You get a question. Give the importance of Pectinet line, and we'll just do importance. The thing to remember is that embryological importance अगर आप देखते हैं above this line, part of the anal canal above this line, ये तो at the upper limit of the anal valve. This is the upper limit of the anal valves. So this is the anorectal junction. Okay? Between the anorectal junction and the anal valves, this part is developed from the hind gut. We have already this key development. We've already done it. But just to recall, the line, the part above the anal valves and till the anorectal junction, this part is developed from the hind gut, and the area below the pectinate line, this area of the anal canal below the pectinate line develops from the proctodium. Proctodium, if you remember correctly. Now, besides embryological region, of this embryological region, because of this embryological region, what we have is there is change in the nerve supply of the two regions. Okay? Above the line, the nerve supply is different from what you have below the pectinate line. Blood supply above the pectinate line is different, below the pectinate line is different. Same goes for lymphatic drainage. So above the pectinate line, the blood supply, nerve supply, and lymphatic drainage is different from what you have below the pectinate line. ये एक importance है. The other importance is embryological, that is the part above the pectinate line develops from the hind gut, the part below the pectinate line develops from the proctodium. Any questions so far? Any questions before I go on to the blood supply? I suppose no, man. Thank you, son. I'm extremely proctodium. Oh, proctodium. Acha. Beta, you remember your embryology? ठीक है? So embryology में जब आपने proctodium पढ़ा था, जब GIT की development पढ़ी थी, ठीक है ना? Urogenital sinus का part, वहाँ से develop हुआ. Proctodium. Okay? So go back to your development of GIT, you'll find proctodium over there. Okay. Anything else other than proctodium? Okay, fine. Let's go ahead. Arterial supply. Arterial supply, यहाँ 5 rectal arteries लिखी हुई हैं, ठीक है? 5 rectal arteries हैं, and there is 1 median segment. So 6 होगी total. You have a superior rectal artery. Superior rectal artery, which is simply a continuation of the inferior mesenteric. ठीक है? Inferior mesenteric sigmoid or superior rectal artery. Then you have these arteries. These are the inferior rectal arteries. These inferior rectal arteries are simply branches of these internal pudendal arteries. And of course, don't forget your middle rectal. Now, middle rectal plays a very small part in the supply of the anal canal. It simply connects the superior rectal arteries over here with the inferior rectal arteries down here. And it supplies the external muscles of the anal canal. Nothing much to do. And of course, don't forget your median sacral, the terminal part of the median sacral artery. And it is this part, the median sacral, it simply supplies some external muscles, and that's about all. The major contribution nahi hai in the arterial supply. And then comes your next. This is of utmost importance, extremely important, so I'll spend a few minutes over it. Beta, the venous drainage of the anal canal is by internal rectal venous plexus कह रहे हैं इसको, internal hemorrhoidal plexus कहते हैं, whatever you want to call it. It is formed by anastomosis between superior rectal veins, the inferior rectal veins, and the middle rectal veins. All three make up an anastomosis, which is lying in the submucosa. The internal rectal venous plexus or the internal hemorrhoidal venous plexus formed by the anastomosis between superior rectal, inferior rectal here, and middle rectal veins. This anastomosis is called internal hemorrhoidal venous plexus or internal rectal venous plexus. This lies in the submucosa. This is of utmost importance to remember that this lies in the submucosa. Okay. Now, once again, let's come back to our pectinate line. Ye pectinate line. Okay. Above the pectinate line, the veins drain into the superior rectal veins. Above the pectinate line, the veins drain into superior rectal veins. Okay, here. The superior rectal veins, this superior rectal vein, this is simply a continuation of the inferior mesenteric vein. The inferior mesenteric drains into the splenic vein, and splenic vein drains into the portal vein. So above the pectinate line, the venous drainage is into the portal venous system via the superior rectal vein. Now, below the pectinate line, what do you have? Below the pectinate line, the veins drain into inferior rectal vein. ठीक है, ये inferior rectal vein है, which is a branch of internal pudendal vein. Internal pudendal vein lying in the pudendal canal. This internal pudendal vein then drains into the internal iliac vein. Internal iliac drains into common iliac. The two common iliacs, one on either side. In fact, internal iliac joins with the external iliac to make up the common iliac. The two common iliacs join together and make up the inferior vena cava. So, below the pectinate line, the venous drainage is via inferior rectal veins into the inferior vena cava. Now, the middle rectal veins, they anastomose with the superior and inferior rectal veins, both. But in itself, the middle rectal vein anastomoses with the superior and the inferior rectal veins. But in itself, the middle rectal veins they join or they drain into the internal iliac veins. Internal iliac joins the external iliac, make up the common iliac, and the two common iliacs drain into the inferior vena cava. Okay? Basically, as arterial supply through the middle rectal vein was limited only to the muscle layer, so is the drainage, venous drainage. The middle rectal vein also drains only part of the muscularis externa. Okay, so now okay, so are there any questions regarding the venous drainage? If there are, please let's clear them up now. Okay, fine. I suppose there are no questions. Let's go ahead. So, just discuss this thing. Above the pectinate line, this is the data of the pectinate line. Above the pectinate line, venous drainage goes into the superior rectal and through the superior rectal vein into the inferior vena cava. Below the pectinate line, the venous drainage, this is the pectinate line. Below the pectinate line, the venous drainage goes into the inferior rectal vein, and through the inferior rectal vein, it goes into the internal iliac and then into the inferior vena cava. So the anal canal becomes a site of portocaval anastomosis. Superior part draining into the portal vein, inferior part draining into the inferior vena cava via the internal iliac. Now, what you have is that normally in everyone, this is the normal site. Okay? So normally in everybody, the veins lying in the submucosa, this venous plexus lying in the submucosa, normally they are arranged in 3 columns. Encircle Carparesco, but they are concentrated in 3 columns. These make are kind of cushions of veins that simply bulge slightly into the lumen of the anal canal. Now, the internal hemorrhoidal, internal rectal venous plexus is lying in the submucosa, so they bulge into the submucosa. They make up 3 columns of vein, which are simply, from the surgical point of view, in our days, it was even today, surgical point of view, say the taking. So even today, they are arranged in 3 columns, placed. If you look at the clock, it is 3, 7, and 11 o'clock position. घड़ी की सुइयां देख लीजिए 3 o'clock position, 7 o'clock position, 3 o'clock position, approximately 7 o'clock position, and here would be the 11 o'clock position. Okay? Your books mentions it. This is something I've never read before. But KLM mentions its position as the mentions the position as left lateral. This is the anterolateral, and this is the posterolateral. So the arrangement of the veins according to Ethelmore is the anterolateral, the posterolateral, and the left lateral. Okay? This is all normal. As far as the external, this was lying in the submucosa of the internal hemorrhoidal, internal rectal venous plexus. Another venous plexus, which is lying outside the muscle. Here, this plexus of veins, venous plexus lying outside the muscle cord, within the skin, inside the skin. So between the muscle and the skin, you have the external hemorrhoidal venous plexus, external rectal venous plexus. Okay. So they are lying between the muscle and the skin. Now what happens is, there's a condition, the surgical condition, which is called hemorrhoids or piles, if you want to call them. Yep, जिसको आप बवासीर कहते हैं, खूनी बवासीर. Now, in that case, these veins get massively dilated. Massively dilated, ये देख लीजिए. Dilated, tortuous veins. Okay? For any reason, for whatever reason, like in cases of prolonged constipation, those who are constipated, they are likely to have these massively dilated veins. Pregnancy may, because pregnancy may increase pressure, that also leads to constipation. Chronic cough, उसमें भी हो जाएगा, whatever. So in that case, these veins become dilated. Now, because of pressure of fecal matter, constipation may, there is fecal matter over here. It is not being expelled because of constipation. That fecal matter compresses these veins over here, and pressure in the veins rises. It rises to a point that these veins, they rupture. They break through the muscularis mucosae and they rupture. When they rupture, the overlying epithelium muscularis mucosae, that also breaks down and blood comes out the renal canal. This is called the mechanism of hemorrhoids or bleeding per rectum, bleeding bawasir जिसको कहते हैं, खूनी बवासीर. ठीक है? Then you also have this area, external hemorrhoids. They are liable to get thrombosed. Chronic constipation में ये देख लीजिए, dilated है and they get thrombosed, and this area is very sensitive. So these hemorrhoids are very painful. These अभी हम nerve supply करते हैं, and I'll come back to it once again. Next to the lymphatic drainage. Follow this in green. The lymphatic drainage above the pectinate line goes into the internal iliac nodes. From the internal iliac nodes, it goes to common iliac and then into the lumbar nodes. Okay. I repeat once again, above the pectinate line, the lymphatic drainage goes into the internal iliac, from there into the common iliac, and ultimately into the lumbar nodes. Below the pectinate line, the lymphatic drainage goes to the superficial inguinal lymph nodes. Okay. Nerve supply, extremely important. Follow this, green, light green. Yeah. Above the pectinate line, since this develops from behind that, The nerve supply will be autonomic. Autonomic supply comes to inferior hypogastric plexus, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic supply tone of the muscle, this muscle, involuntary muscle. इसको sympathetic supply होती है. It maintains the tone of the muscle. However, the parasympathetic supply inhibits tone and it assists in response. Below the pectinate line. Now that is important because below the pectinate line we have somatic supply. Somatic supply is via the inferior rectal nerve. Inferior rectal is a branch of pudendal nerve. Sacral plexus branch. Okay? So this is somatic. In other words, by somatic nerve supply, we mean that this area, since it is supplied via somatic nerve, which is the inferior rectal, this area is sensitive to pain, it is pain sensitive, it is sensitive to touch, sensitive to temperature. So this area supplied by the somatic nerve, inferior rectal, makes this area pain sensitive, sensitive to touch, temperature, etc. However, this area above the pectinate line is insensitive to pain. It is only sensitive to distension. Just distension, nothing else. Now, that simply means that if you have to insert a needle, if there is an abscess over here, you have to insert a needle, it will be very easy because this area will be painless. There are no pain fibers in this area. This is below the pain line. Okay? Sorry, above the pain line. This area is below the pain line. However, now there is a condition which is called anal fissure, in which the submucosa in this area is ulcerated. Ulcer ban jata hai, breakdown kar jata hai mucosa. This becomes extremely painful because this area is pain sensitive. So anal fissure is an extremely painful condition. Isme an ulcer is formed in this area. Break in the continuity of the epithelium. Now, I'm going back to the venous drainage. I want to explain something. Now, this area is pain sensitive. Since the external hemorrhoids is lying between outside the muscle, inside the skin, but this area is supplied by the skin. When this veins, these veins, when they get thrombosed, inflamed, thrombosed, then this area becomes extremely sensitive. So becomes very painful. So the external hemorrhoids can be very painful. Okay? However, these internal hemorrhoids, if a person is suffering from internal hemorrhoids, then yes, there is bleeding, lots of it, but there's going to be no pain. External hemorrhoids, yes, it's going to be painful, very painful. Okay, ये दो main conditions थी that you have in the anal canal. Anal fissure, which is over here, pain sensitive area, so it's very painful, and hemorrhoids. Okay, so I will just recap the importance of dentate line, yeah, pectinate line. Area above is supplied by first let's do the development. The area above develops from hindgut. The area below the pectinate line develops from proctodium. The area above arterial supply comes from superior rectal. The area below is supplied by the middle rectal and the inferior rectal, which are branches of inferior rectal is a branch of internal pudendal. The middle rectal is a branch of internal iliac. The venous drainage above the pectinet line goes into via the superior rectal veins, goes into the inferior mesenteric and then into the portal vein. Below the dentate line, the venous drainage goes into the inferior rectal, that goes into the internal pudendal and then into the internal iliac. Also the middle rectal, which drains directly into the internal iliac, and the internal iliac then joins the common iliac. It joins the external iliac to form the common iliac, and the common iliac then, the two common iliacs make up the inferior vena. Now, I hope you appreciate that then this becomes the site of portofemoral anastomosis. Nerve supply above the pectinet line comes from autonomic, inferior, hypogastric plexus of nerves, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Below the line, inferior rectal, which is branch of pudendal. So this is the importance of lymphatic drainage. Don't forget that lymphatic drainage above this line goes into the internal iliac, and below this line, the dentate line, goes into the superficial inguinal. So this is the importance of the dentate line. So if you get this question, please, all this is given in your book. It is given in a scattered form. You have to put 2 and 2 together. I've done it for you, and you can do it on your own now, I hope. So this was the last slide. Do we have any questions now? Any questions? And I'm still waiting for your response. Any topics that you want me to revise? Abhi to substage karo na on Friday. On Friday we have a substage. Ji bete, what about hemorrhoids? What do you want me to repeat about hemorrhoids? Any particular thing, or you just want me to repeat everything? The Friday's substage includes the entire pelvis and the perineum and the external genitalia. वो सारा जो chapter है pelvis perineum का, that is included in your substage. अच्छा, hemorrhoids को review करते हैं, मैं कर देती हूँ. Do you have any other questions concerning your any question concerning any ambiguity? कोई अभी भी doubt है about the topics in a substage? पहले इसका जवाब दे लो, फिर मैं आपको बेटा ये hemorrhoids repeat कर देती हूँ. Since they are very important, they are extremely important. No, ma'am, it's clear. Thank you, Marvita. Thank you so much. Okay, now let's repeat the hemorrhoids. I'll do it for you. Okay, मैं एक दफा इसको repeat कर दूँगी बेटा. I told you that in the submucosa. Submucosa, I hope you remember that when you did the layers of the GIT, you did a mucosa, a submucosa, muscularis externa, and then there was a serosa. Okay? So this venous plexus called the internal rectal venous plexus or the internal hemorrhoidal venous plexus. This is lying in the submucosa. And then there is an external rectal venous plexus which is lying outside the muscle. So over here, it is lying over here outside this muscle, skeletal muscle. Between the muscle and the skin, ये देख लीजिए. This is the skin of the anal canal and this is the muscle. This is what it is. Okay, so this internal hemorrhoidal venal plexus is formed by the anastomosis between the superior rectal vein draining into the inferior mesenteric, the inferior rectal vein draining via the internal pudendal into the internal iliac, and then you have the joining the superior and the inferior rectal veins, you have this middle rectal vein here, which is draining into once again the internal iliac. Okay. Now, these veins are arranged in three groups here, three columns. These columns are arranged in the 3 o'clock position, 7 o'clock position, and 11 o'clock position. These internal rectal venous plexus or internal hemorrhoidal venous plexus lying in submucosa and external hemorrhoidal venous plexus, external rectal venous plexus is lying between the muscle and the skin, outside the muscle. I'll use the word and repeat the word, outside the muscle. Now, these if the internal hemorrhoidal venous plexus, because of constant raised pressure inside the anal canal, which is the result of constipation. Because of constant raised pressure inside the anal canal, these veins, their outflow is obstructed. These veins becomes dilated and tortuous. Because of that, as they become more dilated, there comes a time when they cannot dilate more. As a result, they rupture through the overlying muscularis mucosae and the overlying mucosa epithelium, and blood flows. As they rupture, blood flows out through the anal canal. Okay. Once again, I repeat, because of raised flow, because of raised pressure in the anal canal, there is obstruction to these veins. They become dilated, they become tortuous. Please note over here. Look at these normal veins. This is how they lie. And look at these veins. Okay? So, as a result of this, this is called hemorrhoids. This is painless because this part above the Pectinet line has autonomic supply, and because of autonomic supply, this area is only sensitive to stretch. So this kind of hemorrhoid is painless. Patient will only complain of blood coming out of the anal canal. Then comes this set of venous plexus, the external hemorrhoidal or external rectal venous plexus. This is liable to undergo thrombosis. When veins over here get thrombosed and inflamed, this area is supplied by somatic nerves, which is your inferior rectal nerve. As a result, any inflammation or thrombosis of the veins in this area, outside the muscle, in this area, this becomes very painful because this area is pain sensitive, it is sensitive to touch, temperature, etc. So thrombosis in the external hemorrhoidal venous plexus. Inflammation of these thrombosed vessels becomes very painful because this area is supplied by somatic nerve, inferior rectal, which is branch of internal pudendal. ये भी bleed करता है. These veins also rupture. Mucosa, this part, mucosa से mucosa rupture का skin rupture नहीं करती बेटा. Skin पे तो सिर्फ you can see these bulging, angry looking hemorrhoids, but this part it ruptures through mucosa. Okay, and blood also comes out of this, but this is also vein pain. G. Any other questions? You're welcome, my dear. You're very welcome. I hope you understood. Because from examination point of view, from every point of view, this topic was extremely important, especially the hemorrhoids and this anal fissure. I haven't made separate slides for these because it was easy to explain this way. Because the substage, course of the substage includes that entire chapter of pelvis and perineum. आपके KLM में वो chapter है pelvis और perineum का. That entire chapter, everything in that chapter is included. Everything has been taught to you. ठीक है, जो नहीं पढ़ाया वो एक्सटर्नल जेनिटेलिया है, वो सेल्फ स्टडी में कीजिए, वो मैंने डिलिबरेटली नहीं पढ़ाया, उसकी जरूरत नहीं है. उसमें से भी मोस्टली हमने पढ़ा दिया है, उसमें से भी हमने आपको No, it is not a stage. A stage includes abdomen and pelvis, both. Stage में बेटा abdomen भी आएगा, interior abdominal wall से शुरू करके everything. उसमें viscera भी आएंगे, उसमें posterior abdominal wall, anterior abdominal wall, उसमें inguinal canal भी आएगा, उसके बाद फिर pelvis शुरू होता है. इस sub stage में you just have the pelvis. Yes, it is a mini final stage, you may call it, because pelvis becomes very extensive, I know, in itself. But you have plenty of time. You've given a lot of time. 2 हफ्ते तो कुछ हुआ ही नहीं है, पढ़ाई नहीं था. Classes तो अब start हुई हैं. ठीक है, thank you. Any other question? किसी भी, any concerning anything? I'm open to questions, beta, because इस region की ये last class है. I'll see you next week. I'll talk to you next week. There will be a revision class on pelvis, and there will be a revision class on perineum, because perineum is something that we students find difficult. Thank you, my dear. Thank you very much. And as I'm still waiting for any particular topic. I guess there isn't any. अगर abdomen में से कुछ repeat करवाना है, मैं वो भी करने को तैयार हूँ, आप मुझे बता दीजिए. But there isn't time. You have to tell me today. Because final stage में तो abdomen भी आएगा, pelvis भी आएगा. All the viscera, all the relations, everything will be included in the final stage. Do I make myself clear about the final stage? So, okay. So, do I sign out? Any questions? I suppose no questions. In that case, I wish you all the very best of luck for your substage, for your final stage, and inshallah, we'll meet next week with your revision topics. Okay, then God bless you all.